It's another week, another opportunity to improve your team with the waiver wire. Now, look, honesty is important. I'm always as honest as I can be on this channel. This is not a week to go all out for someone on the waiver wire. The value is more in the margins this week, but we're going to walk you through it. Let's just quickly discuss some of the key injuries that happened in week 12, because another week of fantasy, another week of very serious injuries that have occurred. Firstly, T. Higgins, if you guys didn't see the catch that he tried to make down the field, had a great effort, but his head slammed against the turf there. And it is a concussion. He didn't come back into the game. I don't expect him to play. Keep in mind that the Bengals play on Thursday night this week, so it's almost a guarantee, a lock, that he's going to miss this week. You need to be prepared, but I've got an answer for that in today's video. Next player we need to talk about here is Rashee Rice. He did have a hamstring injury, which kept him off the field in the fourth quarter, but he did return for overtime. We'll have to monitor that. DK Metcalf, he was kind of like in and out of the game just constantly, limped off the field, came back in. You could see him on the sideline. He was not loving life. We don't know exactly the severity of the injury, but I imagine he has a chance to miss time. So keep that in mind. You should have a backup plan. Alvin Kamara, this one is one of the more serious injuries this week. He left the game with the knee injury. He got kind of twisted up on a tackle. He did not come back into the game. He was ruled out. And then later on, we found out that he suffered a MCL sprain. Jeff Mueller, who's one of our favorites in the industry, says that he could miss 2 to 3 weeks. So obviously, we'll talk about Devin Neal in today's video. Another running back that got injured, Ashton Genty. He got kind of landed on a little bit awkwardly. His ankle is currently the concern. We don't know how serious it is. We didn't really see him back into the action. Unfortunately, you can see it from a different angle there. He kind of gets rolled up on a little bit, and he didn't come back into the game. Bam Knight, who left the game with an injury, he didn't return. Joe Flacco dislocated one of his fingers while throwing today. We're going to see Joe Burrow back anyway, so that's not a big concern. Jacoby Brissett left the game, but he did come back. He seems like he's good to go. And then lastly, we had Baker Mayfield, who left Sunday night's game holding his shoulder, and he did not return. You actually saw him on the sideline in a sling. So if Baker Mayfield's your quarterback, so far the tests are positive, okay, for Baker Mayfield, but you need to be prepared in case worst case scenario becomes true. All right, before Monday Night Football even happens, I want to encourage you to go out there and add Chris Rodriguez completely free if he's on your waiver wire. Why would I say that? Well, don't forget, guys, the last time out, week 11 versus the Miami Dolphins, we saw Chris Rodriguez completely take over the backfield in place of JCM. He was out there for 30 snaps, JCM just 18, had 16 total touches, 10 touches to JCM. And you can see that backfield in a more of a visual way here. You'll see the light blue is Chris Rodriguez dominating early downs, goal line, short yardage. When there's an opportunity to score a touchdown, it looks like Chris Rodriguez is going to be that guy. And if you look at their schedule for the rest of the year, it's actually very favorable. We're talking about Minnesota, the Giants, Eagles, and Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs. He's averaged over 5 yards per carry in 2 of his last 3 games. I think they're going to roll with him for the rest of the year. Okay, before we get into my favorite pickups of the week, I want to bring you my Honey Traps segment. These are names that might look shiny. They might have had a good week, but I don't think they're actually worth picking up unless you pick them up completely free and you're in a deeper league. Starting off with Cam Ward. I mean, Cam Ward, yes, rookies do get better over the course of a year, but I just don't trust him. He had his first rushing touchdown of the season. That's great. He ended up with 24 fantasy points. You love to see it. But, that's the only game this entire year where he scored over 20 points. Leave him on the waiver wire. Dylan Sampson would have been an interesting name. He touched the ball 10 times, had that catch for a touchdown today, over 16 points. But I do think he is fool's gold simply because this is still Quinshon Judkins' backfield. And that was really just one play that really gave all of Dylan's points in this game. So I'd be very cautious to go out there and have high expectations moving forward for Dylan Sampson. Quinshon Judkins left with an injury, but he came back and played the rest of the game. So I wouldn't be too concerned. Dylan Sampson out there 19 snaps, but again, not his backfield. Mitch Tinsley with the Bengals did have a touchdown in this game. He had 6 targets, but keep in mind, Jamar Chase will be back next week. Andre Yeshivas is still more important. And then Davis Sills, who got the touchdown for the Falcons. We will see Drake London back in the next couple of weeks. I don't think it's worth your time. Okay, let's jump into my favorite pickup of the week. And I'm not even that excited about this name. It's just simply because someone has to be the running back for the New Orleans Saints. As we said earlier, Alvin Kamara sustained that knee injury. He is going to miss some time. There's no doubt about it. Now, Devin Neal is the guy that's going to step into that role. Here in week number 12, he played 59 of 80 snaps, had 7 carries, 6 targets, 13 total touches. And yes, it didn't turn into a huge fantasy day, but he had over 11 points. That's great to see. And he's got a good upcoming schedule. Names like Miami, Tampa Bay, the Jets, the Titans. There's a good schedule there. Look, if this is a short-term injury for Alvin Kamara, let's just say it's a week, I would only spend about 10 to 15% of my fab. If it's a long-term injury, like he goes on the IR, I think you could justify spending 50 or more percent of your fab simply because he's a startable name, and that's really hard to find right now on the waiver wire at this point of the year. Okay, at 2A, I'm going to list a bunch of receivers here that I would be comfortable picking up next. Starting off with Chimere DK. We have talked about DK before. He has flashed plenty of times in the past. 17 points in week 7, 16.5 in week 8, over 70 yards in back-to-back games. He's a constant threat in the return game as well, by the way. People were kind of, having a little fun with it online today, saying he was Devin Hester, but he's had multiple returns for touchdown as a punt returner this year. It's been great to see. He's also become integral to their passing attack. 7 targets this week. That's multiple games in his past 4 games where he's had 7 or more targets. You like to see that. Cam Ward is kind of hitting his stride. DK could be a late, season kind of league winner, if you will. Christian Watson has really become the wide receiver of choice for the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, at some point, we will see Jaden Reed back into this lineup. But right now, we are seeing multiple weeks where Christian Watson is the guy in Green Bay. He led all wide receivers in snaps, routes run, and targets. He had 7 of 20 targets, almost a 50% target share. Ridiculous. The Packers didn't need to throw much, but when they did, they went to Christian Watson. He only had 9 points, but this is back-to-back weeks of 5 or more targets, back-to-back weeks of 40 or more receiving yards. In fact, ever since he's come back from the injury, he has had at least 45 or more receiving yards in every single game this year. You love to see that. He's becoming a real threat for the Packers. After that, I do want to talk about Jaden Higgins, who was a my guy this year, an official my guy, had a slow start to the year, but he's slowly trending in the right direction. On Thursday night, now this was with Davis Mills, so I'm not sure what CJ Stroud, when he's healthy, what that will mean for Jaden, but at least the usage is there, right? Snap share, he's only behind Nico Collins. Routes run, again, only behind Nico Collins. He actually led the team in targets this last game. We've seen multiple games where he's been relevant since the bye week. 8 targets in week 10, 7, in week 11, 7, in week 12, 9 targets. So 7 or more targets in 4 of his last 5 games. You love to see that. A talented rookie that's finally getting more and more involved. And I just want to see his role grow. I want to see him be the consistent number 2 in this offense. I think that's possible. All right, next name we can talk about here is Luther Burden. Now, look, I understand Luther Burden, his usage hasn't turned into any big fantasy day just yet. I understand why that is concerning, but the snap rate is going up. All of the peripherals are really good. You'll see he had a career high in snaps in this game, over 50% of the snaps for the first time in his entire career. And if you look at the snaps, he is completely taken over that slot role for Zacchaeus. He was right there with DJ Moore in routes run, had 5 targets. So all of the peripherals are there. We know he's a very talented player, 2nd round pick. He's definitely worth a stash at this point. At number 6, how about Colston Loveland, who has really turned it up here in the last couple of weeks. He's had 4 or more targets since week 7. This week got into the end zone, 4 catches, 49 yards, and the touchdown. A top 5 finish at the tight end spot. Really talented rookie. Should get more and more involved over the course of the year. The next name I think is really sneaky because if you're out there and you're struggling to start, a wide receiver each week, let's say you have Xavier Worthy or one of these names that have just been completely unreliable. John Mechie is a legitimate name that you should look at this point. He led the Jets with snaps, routes run, and targets, tied with Adonai Mitchell, but he actually got into the end zone, caught 6 of his 7 targets for 65 yards and a touchdown. This is a really talented player. His career in Houston really never took off. A bunch of other receivers really broke out ahead of him. and he had to deal with the cancer that he overcame as well. So John Mechie's a really talented guy. Back-to-back weeks with a touchdown in New York, you know, kind of emerging as their #1 threat. You don't have to worry about Justin Fields because they've named Tyrod Taylor their starter. So I think it could be a sneaky flex for a lot of guys out there who don't have one. Now, look, we've got a lot more to talk about, including defensive streamers, but I just want to let you guys know that there's a completely free feature on the Flock site called the My Teams feature. You can access that simply by creating a free account and signing up with the promo code LAND. Then you'll be able to see expert consensus opinion, rankings, etc. Check that out in the pinned comment. Okay, let's talk about the other guys. Names that I think are worth mentioning as well that should be available on a good majority of your waiver wires. Starting off with Parker Washington, who has had really good games recently. Actually, in 3 of his last 4 games, he scored 17 or more fantasy points. The reason that I'm not as high on him is because obviously we know Jacoby Myers, they traded for Jacoby Myers, but also Brian Thomas will be back at some point. So it's difficult to really know exactly what his role is going to be with a healthy Brian Thomas. Right now, he's heavily involved, but if he's getting 6 or 7 targets right now, what does that mean with Brian Thomas healthy? I'm not sure he's going to have that same reliable nature. Brenton Strange, who finally came back from his injury, his first game back, he actually led the team in receiving yards with 93 receiving yards, which is great to see. Ended up with 14.3 fantasy points. He had plenty of good games before his injury. And I think now coming back from the injury, he's going to be needed in this offense. Christian Kirk was pretty relevant on Thursday night. I don't expect him to be reliable each and every week, which is why I'm not as high on him myself. However, he did have 6 targets. The thing is, he was 4th on the team in snaps. He and Jalen Noel are really splitting those slot opportunities. So I'd be very hesitant to pick him up and start him. Yes, he got into the end zone. Yes, he had 54 yards. I just don't care. They're going to continue to get these young guys more and more involved. I would not pick up Christian Kirk unless you're in a really, really deep league. We should talk about Andre Yoshivas, okay? Now, the reason we're talking about him is because he had 10 points this game without Jamar Chase. He's had 5 or more points since week 9. And obviously, as we discussed earlier, T. Higgins is going to miss this game with a concussion, so he will be relevant in a high-scoring game against the Baltimore Ravens. I'll probably start him in the Flock League, for example. He had 7 targets in this game. Joe Burrow should be back. He should be relevant without a T. Higgins in the lineup. Now, I want to quickly talk about a really deep stash. Now, we talked about John Mechie earlier, and understandably so because he led the Jets in overall production at the wide receiver position, but I do think it's worth mentioning Adonai Mitchell for any of the deeper leagues out there. Adonai Mitchell was right there in snaps with John Mechie, right there in routes run, had the same amount of targets and target share. Now, he didn't really convert on those opportunities, had just 2 catches for 42 yards on 7 targets, but you see the talent, you see the explosiveness, you see there is something there. So in deeper formats, I think you should take him seriously. Okay, we're going to jump into week 13 defensive streaming options. However, just want to let y'all know, I did finish 9th in the Super Slam contest this week. You know, I think Puka Nacua just wasn't needed enough, unfortunately. Saquon Barkley let me down a little bit, but we banked $60 from FastDraft there. You can set your own lineup already for week number 13. All you got to do is choose 6 non-quarterbacks, sign up with the promo code LAND. I'll match your deposit up to $50. You can check that out in the pinned comment. Okay, all of the defenses I'm about to show you all have top 10 matchups when you adjust for schedule in week number 13. So for example, the 49ers go to Cleveland. That's a good defense that you could stream there. The Chargers versus the Raiders, the Jags at the Titans, the Dolphins versus the Saints. The Dolphins defense has really picked it up in recent weeks. The Falcons at the Jets and the Seahawks versus the Vikings. These are all fantastic options if they're available on your waiver wire. These are the names to go after, unless of course you have like a must-start defense each and every week. Guys, I appreciate you watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app, where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.